Islam has to be known as more than a religion. The idea that Islam is a spiritual religion like, for instance, Christianity, is completely incorrect.
It would be incorrect to describe Islam as primarily, let alone solely, a religion. Since its early beginning in Muhammad's lifetime, it has also been a geopolitical project and a system of government, a political ideology, if you will.
Islam from its beginnings was both a religion and a system of government. For example, the Islamic calendar doesn't base year one from the time that Muhammad was born, or the time that Muhammad received his first revelation from God, which I think are both what Westerners might expect, but from the time that Muhammad became the leader of an army and the head of state in Medina. This is the beginning of the Islamic calendar because in the Islamic understanding, Islam is a political and social system as well as an individual faith.
In Islam, the separation between temporal, secular, and religious power is not only impossible, it is heretical. Only in the complete blending of all aspects of human activity and all aspects of political and legal functions of the state can we have the caliphate, the properly organized state that is pleasing to Allah.
When Westerners think of religion, whether it's Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, and all the isms in the world, Westerners think that it's a personal issue. A Buddhist will go to the temple and peacefully worship whatever he does, meditates, contemplates. A Jew goes to a synagogue and does his mitzvot, his good deeds. And a Muslim goes to the mosque, pays zakat, alms, or go to the pilgrim al-Hajj in Mecca, or a Christian goes to church on Sunday. They think it's a personal issue, that religion is a personal issue. So when they look at Islam, they compare Islam with the way they understand religions. And that's the first mistake. Islam is not a religion for personal use. Islam is Sharia law. Islam is a form of government to the world first, then to a personal application. Allah. It is Islam not is just how you pray or you pray towards Mecca. First, it's how you dress. You dress in Arab culture. You speak Arabic. You can't go to heaven unless you pray in Arabic. You can't read the Quran in English and expect to get good deeds to go to heaven. You read the Quran in Arabic. It becomes an imperialistic system that everybody now must speak Arabic, think Arabic, practice the religion in Arabic. It's a form of law, not just in how you eat, but how you get married, how you deal with your government, how you deal with your military, how you deal with the youth, how you deal with women. Every aspect of your life becomes Islam. Everything is Islam.
In no way is Islamic Sharia, Islamic government, compatible with Western understandings of human rights and freedom of conscience. Traditional Islam forbids conversion from Islam, forbids anyone to leave Islam. There's no way out. And it forbids Muslims and non-Muslims to live as equals in society. It mandates the second-class status of non-Muslims, forbidding them to hold authority over Muslims, forbidding them to hold certain jobs as a result. It even mandated in history that houses of worship of Jews and Christians were neither to be built or repaired, making the communities relegated to a perpetual state of decline. These relegated to a perpetual state of decline.
In Germany, they call this their welcome culture. More than 1 million asylum seekers have come in the past year. The number is swelling when German Chancellor Angela Merkel declared the borders open to Syrians. But this is one of the last migrant trains to arrive here in Cologne. A panicky Europe is now locking down. The migrant route into Germany effectively closed.
300 people here just...
What is the world's most dangerous ideology? In the first part of the 20th century, the answer was fascism. First manifest in Italy in the 1920s, and then in Nazi Germany and in Imperial Japan. It took a world war and 50 million dead to stamp it out. In the second half of the 20th century, the answer was communism. Between the Soviet Union, Mao's China, and their client states, at least 100 million people were killed in its wake. Today, the answer is Islamism, a radical and often violent form of Islam. Like fascism and communism, Islamism is totalitarian in nature. The state controls everything. Also, like fascism and communism, Islamism is inherently expansionist. It always seeks to get bigger, cross borders, and bring as many peoples as possible under its control. And, like fascism and communism, many of Islamism's adherents are prepared to kill to achieve its aims. Those aims are antithetical to everything Western and other free societies like fascism and communism, free speech, many of Islamism's adherents freedom to practice, kill, not to practice any religion, freedom of assembly, a free press, and, of course, fundamental human and civil rights for all their citizens. Islamism completely rejects the Western principle of separating religion from government. In its view, governments are legitimate only if they rule according to religious law, in Islamism's case, Sharia, Islam's extensive body of sacred laws. Sharia is based on the teachings of the Quran and the Sunnah. The Quran is believed to be the literal words of Allah as revealed to his prophet Muhammad in the 7th century, and the Sunnah consists of the words and deeds attributed to Muhammad. Islamists interpret Sharia to hold that anyone born Muslim must remain Muslim and face execution if they convert to any other religion, that adulterers must be stoned to death, that anyone who insults Islam or Muhammad must either be severely whipped or executed, and that thieves should have a limb cut off. In addition, Islamists condone polygamy and child marriage. These beliefs are being put into practice right now in, among other places, Iran, the Sudan, Saudi Arabia, the Muslim parts of Nigeria, parts of Pakistan, Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan, and wherever else Sharia has established a foothold. If Islamists were content to live under strict Sharia law in their own communities and leave everyone who doesn't want to live that way alone, they wouldn't be a threat to the rest of the world. But that would not be Islamism. Islamism wants the entire world governed by Sharia, and anyone who opposes Islamist expansionism is the enemy and must be destroyed. That, of course, includes the United States, all of Europe, and Israel. But it also includes fellow Muslims. Indeed, Islamists have killed far more Muslims than members of any other group. That, of course. So how many Islamists are there? Nobody knows for sure, but we can make some conservative calculations. There are approximately 1.5 billion Muslims in the world. How many of these are Islamists? A 2013 Pew Research poll offers some clues. 86% of Muslims in Pakistan, 80% in Egypt, and 65% in Jordan support the stoning of adulterers. 79% in Afghanistan, 62% of Palestinians, and 58% in Malaysia, considered a moderate Muslim country, in Jordan, support the death stoning of Muslims who convert 79% in Afghanistan, if only 10% of the world's Muslims are Islamists, and 58% in Malaysia, considered a moderate Muslim country, in Jordan, support the death stoning of Muslims. Among these, how many are willing to take violent action? If only 10% of the world's Muslims are Here we're talking about 58% in Malaysia, considered a moderate Muslim country, support the death stoning of Among these, how many are willing to take violent action? If only 10% to markets, explode car bombs at funerals, throw acid in the faces of girls who attend school, murder sisters or daughters who defy the will of a brother or father, or who fly hijacked airplanes into buildings. This is a very hard number to pin down. So let's again be cautious and say the figure is only 2% of that 150 million. That's still 3 million people, 3 million potential terrorists organized by a common ideology and supported by many more. The good news is that hundreds of millions of Muslims are not radical Islamists. Just to cite one example, the Islamist Muslim Brotherhood governed Egypt for 1 year in 2012. But enough Egyptians were so outraged by the Brotherhood's harsh imposition of Sharia law that they staged perhaps the largest demonstrations in human history against the Muslim Brotherhood and brought that government down. Since the beginning of the 20th century, every generation has been confronted with a lethal threat to freedom and fundamental human rights. Free people defeated the last two totalitarian threats, fascism and communism. If we want to preserve freedom, we, non-Muslims and Muslims alike, will have to defeat the threat of our time, Islamism. I'm Raymond Ibrahim, author of the Al-Qaeda Reader for Prager University.
Ideas have consequences, sometimes good, sometimes bad, and sometimes catastrophic, like the ideas of Karl Marx. Born in Trier, Germany in 1818, Marx didn't invent communism, but it was on his ideas that Lenin and Stalin built the Soviet Union, Mao built communist China, and innumerable other tyrants, from the Kims in North Korea to the Castros in Cuba, built their communist regimes. Ultimately, those regimes and movements calling themselves Marxist murdered about 100 million people and enslaved more than 1 billion. Marx believed that workers, specifically those who did manual labor, were exploited by capitalists, the people who owned, as Marx put it, the means of production, specifically factories, but who did very little physical labor themselves. Only a workers' revolution, Marx wrote in Das Kapital, could correct this injustice. What would that revolution look like? Marx and his collaborator Friedrich Engels spelled it out point by point in the Communist Manifesto. It included the abolition of property and inheritance and the centralization of credit, communication, and transport in the hands of the state, and a lot more along the same lines. In other words, the state owns and controls pretty much everything. This notion was widely discussed and debated in European intellectual circles during Marx's lifetime. But nothing much came of it until Vladimir Lenin took power in Russia in 1917. This changed everything. Despite its repeated economic failures, Lenin's Russia, which became known as the Soviet Union, became the model for dictators around the world. Wherever Marx's ideas were practiced, life got worse. Not by a little, but by a lot. There is not a single exception to this rule. Not the Soviet Union, not Eastern Europe, not China, not North Korea, not Vietnam, not Cuba, not Venezuela, not Bolivia, not Zimbabwe. Wherever Marxism goes, economic collapse, terror, and famine follow. So, if cataclysmic failure, meaning terrible human suffering, is the inevitable legacy of Marxism, why do so many people, and now especially young people, defend it? The most common answer Marxism's advocates offer is that they, whoever they are, Lenin, Stalin, Chavez, never really practiced Marxism. They all somehow got it wrong. Marxism, we are told, is, at its essence, about sharing what we have, from each according to his ability to each according to his needs, as Marx put it. Maybe that sounds good to you, but what does it mean? Who determines ability? Who determines need? The answer is the state, the ruling elite. Under Marxism, that's who has all the power. That's why the truth is this. Marxist dictators like Lenin, Mao, and Pol Pot really did get Marxism right. They wanted absolute power, and Marxism gave them the way to get it. Karl Marx never had to face the consequences of his theories. He lived most of his adult life breathing the free air of London, England, living off the generosity of his collaborator and patron, Ingalls, who, as it happens, inherited his money from his wealthy merchant father. Marx spent his days in the reading room of the British Museum, researching and writing. Although he was obsessed with the term scientific, he was never able to marshal data to prove his theories. There's a good reason for this. There was no data to prove his theories. For all his time in the library, Marx couldn't find any evidence to suggest that capitalism, the free exchange of goods and services through privately owned business, was a passing phase. Throughout the industrial age, working conditions constantly improved and wealth expanded. Marx had to rely on outdated reports to make his case, and even then he had to manipulate the data to get it to conform to his predetermined theories. But Marx really had no interest in proving his theories. He knew that they could be put into practice only by brute force. He said so himself. Of course, in the beginning, communism cannot be effected except by means of despotic inroads, he wrote. His ends could be attained only by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions. All existing social conditions. That's religion, family, personal possessions, freedom, and democracy. They all had to go in order to achieve Marx's vision of an earthly paradise. But since few people give up their liberties and property voluntarily, creating a Marxist state has always required guns, prisons, and summary executions. Marx's many disciples from Lenin on never considered this a problem. Some, like revolutionary poster boy Che Guevara, considered it a bonus. I don't need proof to execute a man, Che is said to have boasted. I only need proof that it's necessary to execute him. If you're still a fan of Marxism after all the death, suffering, and destruction it's caused, that's your right. But own up to it. Don't hide behind the "it's never really been tried" line. It has. I'm Paul Kengor, professor of political science at Grove City College for Prager University. Thank you for watching this video. To help keep PragerU videos free, please consider making a tax-deductible
I'm Calvin Phillips with Campus
donation.
Reform. Today we're at the University of Miami talking to students about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal. It sounds nice, it's ambitious.
How far to the left, you may ask? What's wrong with socialism?
Nothing.
What's wrong with socialism?
Nothing.
Nothing.
What's wrong with socialism?
I don't have anything. I don't have any problems with it.
I don't think anything's wrong with socialism.
Capitalist countries have always been messing with its ideology and trying to delegitimize it.
I kind of like it. I think the American people like socialism.
I think socialism's great.
This is a pretty dangerous part of town. What are we doing here?
Buscando algo que comer.
What kind of food?
Lo que sea, lo que encuentre. Perro, un gato, una paloma. Tengo mucha hambre. Tengo mucha hambre.
Venezuela, a democratic socialist state with the world's largest oil reserves, has descended into a mind-boggling Malthusian chaos. The country has been engulfed in violence, hunger, and corruption, and is on the edge of total societal collapse. Venezuela's socialist experimentation has decimated the middle class, and most people in Caracas live in the extremely dangerous barrios of the city. These barrios are massive, crudely built claustrophobic cities within cities. We're here, one of the biggest barrios in Caracas, to get a sense of how the situation is affecting the poor people here. It's a very dangerous place. We made a deal with the barrio bosses, so we should be safe.
Hopefully.
¿Cuál es tu aporte al rap? Sí, no es por amor al arte, no que soy yo, es quien te crees tú para comparar.
Are there times where you're just hungry? Your family is hungry?
Sí, ya yo he pasado hambre, mi familia también.
Muchísima hambre, incluso a veces me da tembladera por sueño, hambre.
Mayormente pasamos hambre porque no conseguimos la comida, no conseguimos la leche, cereal, el alimento, el azúcar, nada de esas cuestiones. Entonces, por eso mayormente pasamos.
Yo estoy parada y de repente me desmayo porque no he comido nada en toda la noche.
Food has become so scarce that people have to wait in lines, very long lines, in order to get enough to survive, just barely. What time did you go to wait in line?
Estuve desde ayer en la madrugada haciendo la cola desde las 2 y conseguí esto, leche nada más.
All night, all you got was that one can of milk, of leche?
Nada más, una sola.
A mí me toca son los martes y me toca ir los lunes desde más o menos de las 12 de la noche, dormir allá y esperar a ver qué llega, si logro comprar algo. O sea, es muy difícil.
Los niños míos se acuestan sin comer. O sea, yo a veces los dejo, me voy, no sé si ellos de tantas horas que yo me la paso en la cola.
Getting in line overnight does not guarantee that you will come away with anything, because the lines are controlled by the government-approved mafia, with the socialist Orwellian name, The Collective. They bust in their own people right before the stores open and grab most of the food. These are bad dudes that care little for the common people. And these big dogs always eat first. And of course, they don't want their control of the lines to be filmed.
Al menos con la cuestión de los colectivos, eso es una zona que dominan ellos, pues.
¿Cómo te van a decir que tú tienes aquí 100 personas por delante si yo ni te he visto? Entonces llega y te dice, no, pero qué tal, que si no te sale la cola, te vamos a tal, o sea, te amenazan para que te salga de la cola.
Pues ellos son los que dominan a la gente de la cola, ellos son los que llevan la cola a la organizada, y si yo no les gusta que usted compre, no compra, pues.
There are only two classes in Venezuela, the poor and the super rich. The income inequality is absolutely staggering. While most of the country is literally starving, the government-connected mega-rich are still rocking it old school.
Bueno, yo antes de que empezara todo este problema éramos de la media. Ahorita ya estamos en baja, ya ahorita...
Ellos, el gobierno también, ellos tienen su comida, tienen sus casas, tan cómodos. Nosotros somos los que tenemos que estar pasando trabajo.
La necesidad del otro venezolano que tiene, no, pues el otro venezolano puede conocer a un general, puede conocer a un bachaquero que le puede conseguir las comidas por bulto.
Y de paso, si tenemos un teléfono caro, no lo podemos sacar porque, como te expliqué ahorita, te lo roban. Si tienes un reloj caro, te lo roban.
The one thing that is egalitarian in Venezuela is violence. The wave of violence that has descended upon the country has been epic. They have less than 1/10 the population of the United States, but 3 times as many murders. Caracas has had more deaths this year than Baghdad, and those are the reported numbers. The real numbers are much, much higher. All this despite the fact that Venezuela has extremely strict gun laws. This dystopian country has literally become one of the most dangerous places to be on planet Earth. While the violence is literally happening everywhere in Venezuela, it seems particularly bad here in the barrios. I know we got permission to shoot here, but it doesn't really feel like a safe space to me.
Todos esos huecos que están así en esas paredes son tiros así en esas paredes.
Ahorita yo vivo en barrio y en los barrios se ve el pistoleteo, el malandreo, se ve todo y salen a robar, entonces llegan el otro y se comenta.
A nadie ni decirle nada, porque te pueden hacer daño en cualquier manera, te matan y todo.
Do you know anybody who's been killed personally in your life?
A mi hermano y me lo mataron en mi cara y le mataron por robarle la moto prácticamente.
Sí, bueno, a mi primo, nosotros nos mataron un primo aquí.
Hace 5 meses tuve una pérdida de mi novia que la mataron, le dieron un disparo en la Pastora en la cabeza.
Lo mataron allá en la entrada, estaba con mi papá yo lavando la camioneta y le dieron unos tiros ahí y se murió prácticamente en mis brazos.
Matan a la gente a la luz del día, los roban a la luz del día, hay policías en zonas de Caracas y no hacen nada. Hay robado por lo menos en parte de Caracas, de Capitolio, ahí roban a todo el mundo y los policías están por ahí siempre, igualito roban. Caracas está bastante inseguro ahorita, con la situación del país como está.
Right in front of us, a man was shot in the street by unknown assailants. Holy shit. The guy just got shot. Check out the cop. He's just walking away. Do you feel socialism works?
No, porque eso no funciona, porque si funcionara no estamos como estamos ahorita, que estamos ahorita pasando hambre y necesidad, pues, ¿entiendes? Eso no funciona aquí, eso...
No, si esto funcionara de verdad, nosotros no estuviéramos en esto, pues. No estuviéramos haciendo cola, no estuviéramos matándonos por ahí, arriesgando nuestras vidas. En realidad no funciona, esto no sirve, como quien dice.
No, en realidad eso no funciona para nada aquí. Eso es un engaño como quien dice, que ellos no hacen nada, no sirven para nada. Son como unos X más en la vida. No sirven.
Let me ask you this. What do you think of Americans who want to bring socialism, democratic socialism, into America?
Tienen que vivir lo que nosotros estamos
that I
viviendo
talked about
para que ellos vean
with
que no
the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. That is wealth that is passed down, and it's documentable wealth. The same way that the wealth created, or the wealth stolen as a product of slavery, was also documentable wealth. We have numbers that demonstrate precisely how much wealth was stolen, and that's money that in some way could be given back. Now, if we're saying that it's absolutely impossible to give that money back because it's too hard to trace, we'd have to give money to the African tribes, we'd have to give money to people who no longer exist. That's absolutely fine, but we have to understand that we haven't really come to terms with that injustice that's been perpetrated, and if we are admitting that no one is perfectly entitled to absolutely everything that their ancestors had stolen from them, then we also have to accept that there are people today who benefit from the fact that their parents and grandparents profited from this immoral system. And the way to deal with that is with a social safety net that enables everyone to thrive. I'll leave you there.
Now, the first thing I'm trying to say is, this is a hugely controversial principle because it actually involves wrecking the freedom of a free society. You basically have to put it frankly, if we were to carry that out, go into people's homes and take their stuff. Take their furniture, take their cars. You don't seem to have even the guts to do that. You don't have the moral self-confidence to do it yourself. It may be, if I am advocating a rule of social justice and I'm advocating it for the whole society, before I persuade everybody else, let's say I'm a Christian and I believe everybody should give 10% of their wealth to help the poor. And I go, you know what? The Bible says this, the Bible says that, everybody should give 10% of their wealth to help the poor. And somebody says, Dinesh, are you giving 10% of your wealth? And I'm like, actually no, but I did do some tutoring. And you go, wait a minute, aren't you advocating, aren't you saying that there is a moral duty to do this? Why don't you do it? Before you convince us, you do it. And you're like, I don't think I should do it because society is extremely complex, and I don't think I should do it unless everybody else does it. No, either you believe in it and you do it. Once you've done it, you might impress us. And then you might convince the rest of us that our wealth is also ill-gotten. But you can't do it. And I'm not trying to indict everybody of hypocrisy, only you. Because you're the one who said, I'm the beneficiary of illicit privilege. So you're a really good starting point, because I'm asking, if you're in possession of stolen goods, why aren't you willing to return them? So that's why fundamentally I see your charity. You know, during the Civil War, there was a guy who goes, I'm very happy to give, I've given 3 cousins to the war and I'm ready to sacrifice my wife's brother. That's basically your ethics. You're willing to have social justice if other people pay, but you're not willing to pay. So that's the problem. And that's the problem with the progressivism that marches behind social justice while protecting its own privileges. You know how you said, we all have to survive. Really? You have to be at Amherst to survive? You don't have to be at Amherst to survive. You have to be at Amherst to benefit. You have to be at Amherst because you're getting opportunities at this college that many other people are not getting. So if you say you believe in equal opportunity, you're a hypocrite, because you are taking advantage of opportunities unavailable to others. But for you, this hypocrisy is fully justified because you are militating on behalf of the poor. But if you are against privilege, this college is privilege. So there's a glaring hypocrisy, and you will never turn your moral mirror on yourself to say, what am I doing about it? That's my point. For you, society should act before you do, to enforce your moral code.
I'm Cabot Phillips with Campus Reform. With the rise in socialism around America, we're in Washington, D.C. today talking to actual victims of socialism from Venezuela about what their message would be to young people that would like to see socialist policies here in the United States. Let's see what they have to say. What would be your message to young people that think socialism would be a good idea here in America?
Look yourself in the mirror of Venezuela and Cuba. You do not ever want anyone, not even close to socialism, to come to this country.
People are eating from trash bags in the street. So how has socialism actually helped the country?
From the perspective of people who've lived through failed socialism, it's very hard to accomplish.
Yeah, I don't think any Venezuelan can really like socialism because we've seen it put in place very well.
It's not a game. It is not a game. It is not the route to go. It is not possible. It's not feasible. Don't fall for it.
It doesn't work the way the book says it works because we're humans and we have imperfections, and socialism is too perfect to be true.
Check your history, look at the news, look at all the countries that have failed under a socialist government, like Cuba, like Venezuela.
In Venezuela, socialism doesn't work. We've seen what happens when socialism kind of takes to the extreme.
Bernie Sanders, as your enemy, do not ever get involved with this individual or any of the other socialists.
We also thought that this could never happen in our country. We had a balance of powers, we had democracy, and we elected our leaders.
People always